All the way to the basket. Foul. Lays it in for two.
Happy Monday, Wayne Finger Lakes High School Hoops fans. Welcome into the Upstate Hoops podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. Paul Russo here, joined as always by Nate Sharman, Jim Sinicropi, and Kyle Evans. Courtesy here brought to you today thanks to DeSanto Propane, Generations Bank, and Lil John and Barbie Orthodontics. Talk more about them in a little bit. But quite the exciting past week or so, guys, if I do say so myself, throughout the Wayne Finger Lakes.
Yeah, really fun game on Saturday night, Paul. I was a pleasure to be there with you the other night. Just a really good Lions team, and they showed their athleticism against the Voca Prattsburg.
Yeah, Voca Prattsburg at Lions at the community center. What was the capacity like? What was the crowd like?
So on Friday, I talked with when we went up there to do a quick test. One of the maintenance guys, he said they can sit 1,500, expected about that, plus maybe standing room only. I don't think it quite got to 1,500, but very few seats overall. I'd say I'd probably earmark it 12-ish, somewhere in the 12 to 12.
I mean, I'm
range,
terrible at guessing how many people were there, but definitely not close to that 1,500 number. Like we said, there was some empty seats, but more importantly, the atmosphere was just awesome. Yeah. I mean, cheering on both sides was very positive, and it was just awesome to be in a gym like that that's alive like that. It's so much fun.
The Lions avenged their loss last year at Voca Prattsburg with a 40-point win.
Yeah, we will obviously touch more on that, but yeah, I forgot. It'd been a couple years since I'd been in the community center, and it's just a different atmosphere, right, in a way, because you talk about, say, like the Atwood and how historic that place is, but you look at, to me, what I thought was always one of the coolest things, because you don't see it too much around here outside of, Whitman used to have this style floor, but they have the parquet style floor in the community center. So
parquet style, it's a little darker in the crowd, brighter, is similar to like a Madison Square Garden type of feel. It's a great gymnasium, without a doubt, for a game. As is the Atwood, they're just way different. So Kyle's a Lions grad. If you had a big game for Lions, where would you like to see it played?
Yeah, I would probably say the community center, just because of the, you want more fans to be there, to be a little bit louder and stuff. But the Atwood was great. I did like games there too. But yeah, is it
an advantage to play at the Atwood though, more than the community center if you're the Lions?
Yeah, I would say so. I also know though, when Lions plays teams in the community center, the style of game's different. Obviously, the court's bigger. Lions is a very fast team, so when you got a smaller court, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that the athleticism got put on full display, to say the least, Saturday evening. So we're going to switch up the structure of the show a little bit today. We're going to get to our power rankings first, because it was quite the discussion I think we had amongst in different chats to each other and stuff like that. So our Generations Bank Power Rankings, Generations Bank has been serving the financial needs of the Finger Lakes region since 1870. Generations combines the best of modern banking and with dedication to our local communities. Whether you're looking for a checking account, CDs, a home improvement loan, you name it, they have what you need. They are committed to serving and giving back to our communities. Visit them online at mygenbank.com. Generations Bank, member FDIC, and equal housing lender. We'll jump in with the boys first this week. Remained unchanged in our top two. Lions still the unanimous pick at number one. Waterloo, the unanimous number two pick. After that, it got a little bit dicey and shaky with Palmac and Wayne taking up the outright other top five spots. Tied at fifth, though, were Geneva and Newark. Joining them, Red Creek, Red Jacket, Marcus Whitman, and South Seneca in the top 10.
We never thought we'd see Red Creek in their top 10 rankings at the beginning of this year. They didn't have a program a couple of years ago, and now they're back, and they're maybe besides Lions, the top team in Wayne County.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the interesting part with them, where their only loss period, right, 7-1 overall, their only losses in league play to Lions. And it certainly, I wouldn't say it's a doomsday scenario. I think we're all in agreement for the most part, right? It's Lions, sizable gap, Red Creek, and then probably a little bit more of a sizable gap at that point falling through, at least throughout Wayne County in terms of what we're looking at there on the boys' side of things. Did want to touch on go ahead.
Well, I'm just going to say, looking at this thing, Wayne is way overrated at number 3, right? We got him at number 3?
4.
Or number 4?
Yeah.
I mean, haven't won any games of consequence, really, and they lost to Geneva, and they lost to Palmac. Those are their 2 losses. They did beat Livonia. Livonia doesn't seem too dominant this year. Rochester Prep a couple times. I don't know. I'm going to be interested to see Wayne square off against Newark and Waterloo. Wayne's one of those teams that, like I said, been saying, they're going to get better as the year goes on because they're young, and Bill Thompson's a great coach. So I do see them getting better, but I'm just surprised to see him come in, in our cumulative rankings there at number 4. I would have had him probably down around 5 or 6. But going to be fun to see him play some of these Finger Lakes East games coming up over the next several weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I would agree with him too, but I would say that's kind of like that for a lot of teams. Like you just mentioned, Red Creek, they're 7-1, yeah, but I think they played all 8 of their games are league games, and I mean, aside from Lions, they don't really have a tough test. You look at teams like Marion, North Rose, Wolcott, just teams that like have 1 or 2 wins. I just feel like I'm not really high on Red Creek right now. But I think Wayne, winning 8 of their first 10, I still think they got to be up there because, you have to play who's on your schedule, and they are winning the games that they should, be winning. So I would give them some credit in that.
Yeah, Geneva loss ended up being a pretty bad loss. Palmac, not a bad loss. And you mentioned Red Creek. It's tough to gauge. They lost to Lions by 34 back on December 6th, but they got a 10-point win over East Rochester at home. They beat Gananda handily by 27 points. They beat Sodus by 24 points. And, the margin of victory in some of these games against lesser opponents, too, lets me think that they're pretty good here. But again, until I placed my eyes on them, and I couldn't even name 2 or 3 kids on their roster. So maybe we can get a look at Red Creek on Finger Lakes 1 before we get too far into January here.
Right. I think the eye test is an interesting point because I do want to circle to what is tied in the 5th spot with Newark and Geneva in our power rankings. Mentioned obviously teams in the East and stuff like that. We did have at least one set of eyes on Geneva this past week in person, and we'll circle back to that as well as we do our week recap when they took on Palmac. And I can see where there's definitely they got talent on that team. It's just I think they run into trouble against a team, say like Palmac, where in the terms of Battle of the Bigs, where you have Ian Goodness against Brian Whitley, for example, and kind of some other maybe head-to-head matchups like that, where you can definitely tell where maybe the better overall players and teams kind of can rise against each other in that sense.
Yeah, what did Geneva score against Palmac? 33? 33 points. Yeah. I mean, I was high on Geneva. I high on Ed Collins taking over that program, and again, just like Wayne, I think they will get better and better. But I mean, I was a little wrong. 33 points. They got some work to do in Geneva. They were blown out.
Yeah, I mean,
in a game I thought that was a pretty even matchup.
The Panthers team this year reminds me a little bit of last year in a way. Out of the gates, last year was definitely rougher out of the gates than it was this year for them. But second half of the year, they kind of picked it up a little bit. I would kind of imagine it might be a little case of, history repeating itself a little bit with them potentially.
Well, they're B1 this year, not A2, like Wayne's A2. So that's a benefit for Geneva for sure. But, man, I watched that Geneva-Palmac game, and I couldn't believe how bad Geneva looked on offense. And I was also just impressed with the Palmac's play on both ends of the court, and there was no surprise from Pelmac. They certainly are an experienced bunch, an athletic bunch, and a well-coached bunch. Trevor Sanders does a great job. But yeah, this Finger Lakes East is really interesting because we have Waterloo at number 2 in our power rankings. Nobody saw that coming, and then we have, Wayne, Geneva, Newark, and Pelmac, and Whitman is decent. Remember, they beat Minders, who is nowhere near our top 10, the Minders boys, but it's pretty interesting, and I'm not ready to hand Waterloo any league titles, or let alone sectional titles.
Yeah, I mean, this is where, we can kind of also table maybe a little bit of this, but we're entering now, I mean, the end of this upcoming week when we take a look at the week ahead, and even, to be fair, really the start of this week through really the mid to end week of next week is when you start getting in every league now the wraparounds where you're starting to see teams a second time. We are pretty much officially halfway through the regular season officially now in the Wayne Finger Lakes.
Yeah,
as crazy as it seems.
I was going to say, too, games played is a big thing. You look at Geneva. They've only played 6 games. It's one of the teams that's played, the least amount of games thus far. But
flip side, right? Pelmac's played 10.
Yeah, Newark's played 7.
Yeah, I do have Pelmac, though, ahead of Geneva right now. Obviously, that could change. There's still, plenty of games to go. But Pelmac is definitely the better team, in my opinion.
You mentioned all these teams in the Finger Lakes East, and I still think Newark's the best. They haven't showed it yet, and obviously you're going to have to show it on the court, but I still think that Newark's the best overall team in the Finger Lakes East. And if you look at their schedule, they beat Pelmac by 5 back on December 9th, and then they lost that big loss to Waterloo, and then they got crushed by Victor, a AA team, but in between they beat Honeyway Falls Lima, and they beat Whitman by 12. That Waterloo loss at Waterloo in a game where they were missing 2 of their starters, they're really taking a hit here in our rankings for that one game. Again, they beat Pelmac, and as rough a start, I guess, as they've had, and losing a couple there's not games missed from the schedule, right? They didn't play in that Elmira tournament this year, did they?
About right,
yeah, so...
Yeah, because that HFL is technically a tournament game, I believe.
Yeah, so they got Wilson Magnet coming up tomorrow night, or 2 nights. Tomorrow night, Tuesday night, and then they'll host Geneva, and then they got Hornell at Keuka College, and then they have Wayne, and then away at Pelmac. So I think by the end of this month, Newark will find their way into the top 3 of these power rankings.
It's really all to see really there. You bring up a good point. I mean, this is an important stretch of game for the Reds. Before we move to the girls, quick note here. 8 through, really as I call it, through 12 here, because we had 12 or 13 teams rather receiving votes on the boys side thing this week. While the Finger Lakes West is found in that bottom portion here, Red Jacket at 8th, South Seneca at 10. Honeoye came in at 11th in terms of total votes gathered. Mid Lakes tied at 12th as well.
I don't know what to make of the West.
Yeah, it's been a mind-boggling because we had Mid Lakes ranked. I believe Mid Lakes was like 5th or 6th on first.
Well, we assume that Mid Lakes could win the Finger Lakes West, but apparently they can't. They're a Class B1 team, in a league with C3, D1. All the other teams are D1 or C3 teams except for Bloomfield's C1. And so, Mid Lakes right now has 2 league losses in the Finger Lakes West. And, between Red Jacket, Honeoye, South Seneca, even HAC, even Dundee Bradford, I mean, they could throw their names in a hat. No one stands out. And they've beaten up on each other a little bit so far early season. Yeah,
I mean, Nate brought up a good point over the weekend, to me anyway. We've kind of had the succession circle kind of begin here a little bit in a couple different leagues, and the West is one of the leagues that was brought up in that.
Yeah, you've seen so many. You've seen it in the Finger Lakes East too, with some of those like Newark, Geneva, Wayne. Those teams that they all beat each other. So it's really difficult to kind of look and see who the better team are out of that cream of the crop.
It's certainly the case in the Wayne County girls, which we're going to talk about in a second too. But one last thing, Marcus Whitman, a Finger Lakes West school perennially, has moved to the Finger Lakes East the past few seasons. And if they were in the Finger Lakes West, they wouldn't lose a game against this group.
Right.
And it's not necessarily a shot. They're smaller schools, but yeah, I mean, do you think Honeoye has a shot against Avoca Prattsburg and D1 sectionals? I mean, maybe. Red Jacket, C3, Midlake certainly no shot in B1. South Seneca C3. I don't know. I like to look at these teams and say how many teams are sectional contenders, and the Finger Lakes East is always producing sectional champions. The Finger Lakes are the Wayne County League has produced a lot of sectional championships over the past 2 to 10 years, but the West has not. In a long time. I remember Honeoye played Clyde Savannah in the Blue Cross maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Red Jacket played Whitman in a final, but few and far between for sectional titles in the West.
Yeah. I'm about to say, I remember it used to be, again, not to go to the well and date myself, but they back in the day, you bring up a good point. I mean, I remember Bloomfield always used to be really competitive.
Bloomfield boys, yeah.
I mean, South Seneca as well for a long stretch.
All these schools had good.
They're coming back a little bit. But.
All these schools, like AJC, probably had one of the better boys teams they had last year or the past couple years. Max Brown, but all these teams have had good teams. Going back, Naples had a really good team. Lost in the semifinals at Bloomfield to it might have been RCMCS, I think it was. But they've all had good teams within recent history, but man, not super recent.
Yeah. All right, let's head over to the girls' side of things, where in my mind you saw probably the most shakeup in our power rankings so far this year. Waterloo again, unanimous number 1, 9-0 for them. Palmac moves up to number 2, and then you have East Rochester coming in at 3, Bloomfield at 4, Midlakes at 5. And then rounding out the top 10 there, Clyde Savannah, Minders, Dundee, Bradford, Lions, and then Marcus Whitman. So girls had a lot of different movement this week. You saw, and we alluded to it really in Wayne County, where you kind of had the circle kind of start in the succession circle a little bit here, and we'll touch on some of those games as well here in just a minute. But Finger Lakes East rise to the top here for the time being, and justifiably so. But Jim, I saw you shake your head a little bit just now.
Well, here's the problem. The Finger Lakes East teams are better than the Wayne County teams and the Finger Lakes West teams. So when I look at Minders being 7 in our poll, I'll take anybody's money that wants to take me Minders and Clyde playing head up, or Minder. This isn't, obviously we've learned that this is not last year's East Rochester team. Bloomfield, I don't know, but I would take Minders against any of those teams. And so it's tough. It's tough because Minders doesn't have really many quality wins inside the Wayne Finger Lakes. They've gone out of the league. They beat Onondaga, but they're going to have a chance to kind of show themselves. Waterloo really took it to them on Saturday, but I think Friday is it Palmac they play
Friday at Palmac?
Yeah, that game will be on Finger Lakes 1-2. So that's a good opportunity for Minders maybe to say, hey, we're a little better than we've shown so far, and that'll be probably the game of the week on the girls' side. Obviously, Waterloo's 1 and Palmac's 2. But from there, it's a mess, and I'd like to take a look at Bloomfield too to kind of gauge where they'd stand. And then we got the same problem Kyle was talking about earlier in this league, in the Wayne County League. East Rochester beat Lions. Lions beat Clyde. Clyde beat East Rochester. So who's who? So why do we think that East Rochester is 3? Because Lions beat Clyde. Right? It's tough to say. So I think Lions at 9, because if you take that into account and seeing the Lions, I just got to check out Lions. How many losses they have? Just the 1, right?
I believe so,
yeah. They're 6-1.
Yeah, and that 1 loss came to East Rochester,
Yep.
but they beat Clyde, who beat East Rochester.
They should not be number 9 on this list.
Yeah, I mean, I would consolidate those 3 teams kind of towards the middle right now, and maybe have Lions being 6, or maybe they beat Clyde, so they're 3 behind them, and East Rochester's 3 ahead of Clyde. and Clyde just beat East Rochester. I think that those teams should be like back-to-back 5, 6, 7 maybe.
Yeah, Clyde's ranked way too low in my mind. I think they need to be ranked higher, especially, like just what you said, Jim. ER being 3 spots ahead, I'm not sure about that.
And I think that Minders beats any of those 3 teams, honestly. And I don't know where Bloomfield fits in. Right now, Bloomfield's the 4th team in our power rings. They haven't lost, so.
What about Dundee Bradford? They're 8-1 as well.
Bloomfield beat them, though.
Right.
So you got to remember that,
Right.
Kyle.
I mean, their only loss is to Bloomfield. There's a couple teams, honestly. So you look at Whitman at 10, for
Dundee Bradford
example.
is good.
Their only loss on the year is also to Bloomfield. And not to go too much, I guess, into the looking glass, but we're a couple weeks out from East Rochester playing Bloomfield in a non-league game. Even.
Perfect, right?
So,
Yeah, that's huge.
Perfect.
You just heard me trash the Finger Lakes West Boys League. Same can't be said of the Finger Lakes West Girls League. Historically, or in recent history, South Seneca's gone to the state Final Four. Red Jacket had a pretty good team a few years ago. And
state champion team as well.
Yeah, 2012, 13, somewhere in there. And Marcus Whitman, Liz Royston taking over. I still think the Finger Lakes East is, if you match up Finger Lakes East team, the top 3 or 4 Finger Lakes East teams against anybody in either one of the leagues, that they'd be heavily favored. But as far as sectional championships, Finger Lakes West girls and the Wayne County girls have a lot more contenders, I suppose, than on the boys' side.
I know, not to go back to Wayne County, but some I just kind of remember a little bit here. But Granada's kind of in that circle as well, a little bit with East Rochester, Lions, Clyde a little bit. They're probably, I'd say, 4th out of the 4 in that. But you look at what they've done. They lost to Palmac by 1. And, at the moment, they haven't played Lions. Or no, they did play Lions, but their only losses league-wise in terms of whatever have been to
East
Rochester and Clyde.
Yeah.
So.
And that Palmac game was shocking, way back on December 5th. But Karen Mewison's Gananda Blue Panthers program has always been solid, and has been deep in sectionals recently, and so you can never quite count them out. But yeah, I would say that they're probably bunched in there just behind those other teams. They lost at home to Clyde by 9, and they lost at home to East Rochester by 15. And their wins are Byron Burgeon, Honeoye, North Rose, Red Creek, and Williamson.
Yeah.
So no real quality wins.
No. All right. Any other parting shots here for the power rankings? I'll be honest with you. I think this was, to me anyway, for me personally, probably the toughest one to really kind of gauge out so far.
Yeah.
I think last week proved to be an interesting week. We'll jump into that in just a minute.
I spent a lot of time on the girls.
Yeah, it would have been easy if East Rochester beat Clyde.
Right.
That would have made things a lot easier. Because then we put Lions ahead of Clyde because they beat them. East Rochester may have been more justified with the ranking of 3 that we have, Matt, that I don't agree with. And when is that Bloomfield East Rochester girls game?
I want to say the 28th.
So we got to wait a few weeks. We got to wait a few
yeah.
weeks for that one. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's definitely one of the few remaining non-leagues across the board that I think some people certainly should have circled on the radar coming up. All right, let's head over to our DeSano Propane week recap. DeSano Propane, 4 generations strong as a trustworthy family-owned business with unmatched customer service. Go online at DeSanoPropane.com for more information or call toll-free at 1-800-752-4574 today. Since 1937, the difference has been DeSanto. So we'll start with the girls' recaps for the week. Start on January the 4th. The Lions-Clyde game, as we mentioned, the Lions 40, Golden Eagles 38. For Lions, Jay LaBelle had 17, Kara Stevens had 10, Cam Bonnell and Millennia Glanton each had 5.
Kyle, how old is Caleb Bell?
I'm not
sophomore
sure.
now?
I think she's a sophomore, if I remember right.
Yeah, I think she's still definitely got a few years left.
Yeah. For Clyde Savannah, Taylor Carno Valley, she's also a freshman, by the way. She had 13, Jada Larson 12, and Ashlyn Rattray had 5. So,
They're
classic
a younger team.
Yeah, another classic, chapter added to the rivalry between Lions and Clyde Savannah, and one that came down right to the very end.
Yeah, I was watching the game. Clyde Savannah had like 3 opportunities at the end there, and they couldn't put it in. But so Lions held on, and it was a big win for them.
it kind of really started what would end up being a very interesting week in Wayne County, as we've kind of alluded to on the girls' side of things. And look no further, 2 days later, on the 6th, East Rochester goes to Clyde. And they lose 45-48, as we kind of already mentioned a little bit. Lily Funk had 13, and Zariah Eldridge had 11 for the Lady Bombers. And then on the flip side for Clyde Savannah, Jayla Larson had 21, Taylor Carnevale 17, and Kylie Paler had 6. So big rebound win right off the bat for Clyde Savannah just a couple nights later.
Yeah, and it's like I said, it's great to see this league be so competitive. And if you are looking for a good Lions-Clyde rivalry, then you don't want to watch the boys this year.
No.
So, and then you got Clyde, East Rochester, and that Gananda team we mentioned, all in Class C1. Lions alone in C2. So Lions wouldn't meet any of these teams unless it was a play in a C state qualifier type of situation or Far West regional qualifier. But I could easily predict, if the brackets work out that way, a Clyde Savannah East Rochester final in C1.
Right.
It'd be awesome.
And then, selfishly, that's what we root for anyway, too, because then at that point, you selfishly hope that
2 for 1
on the play-in, you come back around,
you
have even more of that opportunity. Nate, if you don't mind pulling that graphic up again from this past week for the scores. Any other really big standouts to me on the girls' side of things? To me, it really honed in on Wayne County. It was a rougher week. Trying to pull some of the games. You mentioned, Jim, for example, like the doubleheader between Waterloo and Minders.
Boys, girls.
And it just, Waterloo was kind of
not
all
good.
over them.
Not good. Minders was a little short-handed for that one, but still, I don't think it would have made a difference.
Right.
Naples girls getting that win against Red Creek.
Big.
South Seneca holding Honeyway to 26. Yeah. I was a little surprised at the Dundee Bradford Romulus differential on the 5th there, but Bloomfield beat HEC. There was a lot of good West games, I suppose. Mid Lakes took care of business against Newark, but it was close, right? 54-47.
In fact, Newark was up at halftime, if I remember correctly, in that game. Coach Kearney's still searching for career win number 400 in that, so that's something to keep an eye on. But Newark, I believe, actually had the lead through pretty much all the third, if I remember correctly, as well in that game.
Newark girls program has not been great for a while now, so they do seem to be trending up. Remember, this is a Mid-Lakes team that beat Minders at Arthur L. Baker, and now they hung tight with Mid-Lakes.
Let's transition over to the boys' side last week here. Quickly start again on the 4th here. Dundee Bradford 54, Red Jackets 64. Nick Slavik had 16, Aiden Webster 10, and Ryan McTamney had 7 for Dundee Bradford. But the real storyline here, Red Jackets James Sabito had 41 of the team's 64. Jonathan Bugby had 9, Aiden Reed at 6. Mentioned, right? Those are kind of statement victories in a way if you're Red Jacket, where it kind of showing like, hey, maybe it is us.
Yeah, and this wasn't like some pushover team in Dundee Bradford that they just lit it up. That 41-point outing by Sabito is really impressive. Remember, they're playing 36-minute games, so he's averaging more than a point a minute.
Yeah, I would call that a quality win for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I remember he was one of the key guys last year, the couple games that we did over at Red Jacket. I remember against Minders and then again against Romulus. He was one of the big kind of movers and shakers in that game, and certainly good to see that continue over into this year with that. On the 5th, we've already alluded to it a couple different times, but Palmac 38, Geneva 33. Anthony Torres had 18 for Geneva. Brian Whitley had 4, and Tim Moore had 4. Palmac, Ian Goodness had 20, and Aiden Neese had 5, but both respectively had buzzer beater threes to end the first quarter with Goodness, and then the first half with Neese. And Goodness was also our Chino's Pizza Restaurant player of the game that game.
Again, Geneva only scored 33, but Palmac only scored 38 themselves. And Ian Goodness had 20 of them, 20 of the 38, and Torres had 18 of Geneva's 33. So there was 71 points in the game, and 38 of them, more than half, were scored by 2 guys, one on each team.
I'll say this. I thought it was a really good defensive game overall.
I agree.
I know the second quarter, I remember looking down at my stat sheet with 2 minutes to go in the quarter. I'm like, there's only been 1 field goal scored in the quarter up to that point. And that's the way. Look, that's the way basketball sometimes breaks, especially at say just specifically the high school level. But to the credit where credit's due, Paul Mac actually runs not a 2-3 but a 3-2 zone.
Yep, they've been doing
and
that.
That is, and seeing it in person really for we saw a little bit last year, but for me really being as close as we were, the way it's set up there to do the broadcast. And by the way, first time I've been there in person to do one like that, it's a phenomenal setup and phenomenal work.
Yep,
that the whole group led by Kevin Schlegel does over there.
It really is.
And Nate, I'm really excited for you to kind of experience that this week.
Should be a model for other schools.
Right,
Every school should have that, I think, that type of program for the students that are interested in communications to participate in. And it's everything from running a camera to developing graphics to working the technical aspects of it to being an on-the-air type of person. That's great. Yeah. It's just a benefit for kids that go to Palmac that 100%. Most other schools don't offer.
But that zone, and this is the key part in any zone. I mean, we're right in the heart of Syracuse country. Key to any zone is movement, movement, movement. Palmac's zone always in movement. They're never lax. They're never letting anything develop early in front of them. They're always trying to jump that next pass.
All those kids from Noah Brooks to Kinslow, they're really good athletes. They're not going to get tired out there. It's just Ian Goodness is the most talented offensive player on the team, no doubt. But who else can put the ball in the basket? So they had they had 18 points other than Goodness's 20. That's 9 field goals. I assume there might have been a few free throws. So, how many people put the ball through the basket besides Ian Goodness? 8 times all game?
I remember looking through at the end of the third quarter the stat sheet. And in that game up to that point, there was only 3 total free throws between both teams.
Oh, yeah, I remember you asking, I think, the Palmac student. He said 18
Yeah, I asked Dylan to take a guess, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was hilarious.
Right. And it was only 3. But to that end, Geneva, they do the opposite. They run predominantly a man defense. At least they did in that game. And I'll tell you what, they did not leave anybody alone. And really, at certain points, they were getting tempted with, and they successfully were able to double team whoever was controlling the point for Palmac. So that's, to me, someone to also really keep an eye on with these Panthers kind of as we get further along into the season. If they could really take that to the next level, I think it can kind of overcome if they have any really big issues on offense. Because, hey, good defense leads to a good offense, to be honest. So
yeah. And they did when they did force turnovers, a lot of times they weren't able to finish on the other end when they had numbers. But, yeah, that's a low point output for Finger Lakes East varsity boys basketball game, 38-33.
Defensive 90s basketball defensive delight that game.
Meanwhile, Lions, no problem scoring.
No, 88-43 over Avoca Prattsburgh. For the Titans, Sawyer DeVoe had 16, Evan Campbell had 9, and McCoy Putnam had 6. J.C. Walker had 19 for Lions, and Jameer Johnson had 18. Jacob Sides, our Cicino's Pizza and Restaurant player of the game, also had 19, and we were able to catch up with him post-game and have a quick little chat with him.
Welcome back in, everybody, on FairLakes1.com and Lions Athletics for our Little John Barbie Smiles with Style post-game show. And we're joined up here by our Cicino's Pizza and Restaurant player of the game. Jacob, can you hear us in the? Can't hear us in there? All right, what about now? Perfect. Nothing quite like live media.
I know.
So, Jacob, we'll start here. First and foremost, you saw these guys last year, lost to them. I'm assuming that might have been a little bit of bulletin board material for you guys coming into tonight.
100% was, yeah. All week we've been preparing. We just never forgot what happened last year. They knocked us out of our undefeated season last year. We want to make sure that didn't happen this year. So we came in with a fierce intensity and made sure that didn't happen.
I'd say certainly that was the case. Going into the game here a little bit, breaking it down a little bit, it was a really good team effort, and then you have JC getting a little bit of foul trouble. Same thing with Michael Briggs a little bit. At that point, you kind of took over a little bit, you and Jameer Johnson a little bit, Is that something that you guys kind of work in practice a little bit, making sure everybody's kind of knowing their role in situations like that kind of happen?
Yes, sir. It's always next man up mentality. The coach has always been preaching that throughout the season. No matter what happens, you got to be ready when you come in there and play 100% no matter what.
I think I'll end it with this question here, kind of going into the rest of maybe the season a little bit. You go up against Marion next, what's kind of the mindset going into maybe a little bit of a lesser opponent in a way after coming off a game like this? Does the mentality stay the same for you guys? I know you mentioned that a little bit player-wise, but you keep that mentality when it's kind of the next team up.
Oh, 100%. This year, we're coming for the state championship. We had high expectations last year. We didn't quite get them. We fell short in the sectional championship, but this year we're coming for revenge.
Sounds good. Jacob, congratulations again on a big game for you. 19 points by our calculation. I'll let you get down to the locker room, celebrate your teammates. Congratulations. I'm sure we'll see you again coming down the line.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nate. And it was great catching up with Jacob at the end of that game. And
Great interview.
One of the key things I actually took away from it was, one, how well-spoken he was, but two, just to give a quick glimpse into that game a little bit more, J.C. Walker was in early foul trouble. Michael Briggs, who controls the point for Lions, was in foul trouble. And Jacob, for the most part, was, not to say he was out there by himself. That's completely unfair, but he really kind of took over the leadership role on the court really well and just kind of ran with it at that point. And look, he was the game last year against Avoca Prattsburg was one of the games that he was able to play in, and he's got a full year now with Lions, coming over from Newark a couple of years ago. And I'm excited to see what more he can really do. I mean, he was really exciting to watch.
They're not number one in our power rankings or the favorite to win sectionals without Jacob Sides.
Right.
I mean, J.C. Walker is fantastic. Lions is going to win games with a guy like J.C. Walker, but you need someone else, and that's Jacob Sides, and that's not taking anything away from Lopez or Briggs or any of the other kids. Johnson in the middle did pretty good against Voca.
He was awesome.
But I will say one thing. He's talking about state championships?
Yep.
State championship?
Yeah,
Jeez.
I like the mindset.
Hey, they beat last year's championship, right? Well, Class D, but
They
still.
did. Yeah.
I don't mind the mindset, but keep in mind that they've been talking about state championship for a while in Lions, and Justice Smith couldn't even get them to the Far West Regional, right? They've had some real good teams that I think are at least as good as this team, but probably better because you had Justice Smith on there. And they couldn't get it done. Back-to-back years losing in the Class C play-in final. CG Finney beat them. And then who was the other team they lost to? CG Finney. It was both games were in Newark. One year it was CG Finney.
Was Cal Mum?
Just beat. Yeah, it was. Oh, you're right. Cal Mum with the Molisani kid. Tootie Smith tipped one in to send it into overtime, and they lost that game. So, less talk and more just focus on the court. And if you win enough games, you'll get there.
I mean, to that end, though, that he also brought up, though, in my mind, that's a key thing, right? They're taking it still, at least for him, for sure. It's one game at a time. You can't treat any opponent just because it's.
Again, I agree with you there, too, but guess what? When you're playing in Wayne County, you can. Well, it's tough to stay focused and take it one game at a time when you're basically playing exhibition games all season, and then you bring in a team like Avoca Prattsburg so you hopefully can get a test, right? And it ends up not being a test, and I just got to check out one thing here.
It was their first quality win. I mean, they had 8 league games before that game on Saturday. They haven't really had a tough test, but I am interested in the Aquinas game coming up. Lions Aquinas, I think that's February 11th. They should give them a
it's
better
one of the
test.
final games of the year.
Moravia is on the schedule. That one's at home.
That game's at Keuka College, actually. They moved it down there, yeah.
So that'll be a bit of a test. But, yeah, you're right, Kyle. You look at this. They got, Red Creek, East Rochester, Ganonda, Clyde, Sodus, Williamson, North Rose, and then Avoca Prattsburg, which why we're waiting for this game. They doubled them up, +2,
with guys even in
43.
foul trouble, too. That's the craziest part about the win.
Yeah, and so like you said, you're looking forward to that Moravia game, and then the Aquinas game, a AA Aquinas, and then Geneva to close out the regular season is on their schedule too.
Right.
Yeah. So that's great to see. And I think you have to do that if you're Coach Schott. You can't have any of your, and this was something that they played some really questionable out-of-league games the past few years. You got to take every opportunity you have to test and challenge your team. If you want to, first of all, if and when they get to a sectional final or maybe a semifinal, that might be one of the best teams that they played all year outside of these out-of-conference games. And then, obviously, when they've gotten to the Far West Regional before, it was just another level. And they just, when you go every game you play, you're favored by 30 to 40 points. How can you prepare for a real challenge? So it's good to see that he's doing this. And having Aquinas on February 11th and Geneva on February 16th is a great way to go. Marion's sandwiched between them, but you gotta do it.
Yeah, I mean, Yeah. I mean, look, Alabama plays, Jackson State sandwich in between games, so.
Yeah, but then they got to play LSU
Right, no,
and
but that's,
Ole Miss and Arkansas and Texas A&M and all the teams in the SEC. The Wayne County and not the SEC.
No. I wasn't doing that compare. I was just saying like the schedule sandwich comp there, but.
Yeah, no, there's nothing you can do with that. You only have so many opportunities to schedule out-of-league games. I think Lions has, 4 out-of-league games this year? Avoca Prattsburg, Aquinas, Geneva, and Moravia. Yeah. So those are 4 good choices by Coach Schott. You got to take advantage of all 4 of those. Either that or convince the coaches of the Finger Lakes East to let you play in the Finger Lakes East.
Yeah, we say it over and over again. They have to get out of the Wayne County League. I mean, it's every season they're just cruising past all these teams, and it's not even fun to watch, honestly.
No, and so when we look at where can we get a look at Lions this year on our schedule? And the thing that sucks is 5 years ago the Wayne County League was incredible. East Rochester was good. North Rose Wolcott had a great team. Clyde was better than Lions, and Lions then became better than Clyde towards the end. Towards Justice Smith's junior year, and Gananda boys were good. Enrique Mossman, that was a great league back in those days. It really was. It was a great league, and all those teams I just mentioned, all of them went to sectional finals. Not all of them won sectional finals. I know that North Rose team had their heart broken by Wellsville and early college and back-to-back years. Clyde was able to win a sectional title. Lions won a couple, beating Perry, and then Red Jacket another year, I think. Gananda lost to North Star Christian. Really unfortunate with the great North Star Christian team. Got stuck down there in Class C2 one year when Gananda went to the finals and lost to them. So, and East Rochester lost to, it might have been MCS. But anyways, that was the Wayne County League 5 or 6 years ago. Not the same.
All right. Running out of some time here, so let's take a look at our Little John Barbie week preview. Well, Dr. Littlejohn, Dr. Barbie, and their outstanding orthodontic team share a common goal to ensure the overall wellness of each of their patients through their exceptional orthodontic care. Dr. Rod Littlejohn and Dr. Liz Barbie proud to support our area high school athletes. You can check out Dr. Rod and Dr. Liz online at littlejohnortho.com. So, keeping with a little bit of the themes here, some rivalries from last week, and got a couple more coming up this week, starting on the boys' side of things. Tonight, Gananda's at East Rochester. Classic little one right there.
Big rivalry game. If the inside the gym for that Gananda East Rochester game, whether it's at ER or Gananda, is different than any other game that they play in their schedule. That is a huge rivalry game.
Tomorrow night, Mid Lakes is at South Seneca, so a little bit of West action to kind of also see what we got really at the top half of that league. And then Canandaigua travels to Waterloo, a bit of a rematch from earlier this season where Waterloo lost on a last-second tip-in. We'll be there, myself and Nate, for that game, so looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one to see. We thought that maybe Newark would challenge Waterloo more than they did, so Waterloo's going to have some tough games coming up. See if they can justify that number 2 ranking in their power rankings.
Plus a little bit of the old school Finger Lakes East, bring them back. Bring them back.
Although Canandaigua was never very good at basketball when they were in the Finger Lakes East, honestly. They just weren't.
Yeah. On the 12th, Thursday, Mid Lakes at Red Jacket, and then mentioned this one a little bit already, but Geneva at Newark also that night. So.
Yeah, now that's the one right there. It's a great opportunity for both teams to prove that they're better than what we've seen so far.
And Braden Steve is back, right, for North?
Yeah, yep, they're at full
officially?
strength.
Okay.
Yep, I thought I heard that.
Good. Yeah, I kind of wondered about that, I think, openly through last week, I know. And
now,
then,
this is just this Newark team. One question I have about this Newark team. I know they got talent, but do they have toughness? So, Pelmac, I think, was able to beat Geneva by only scoring 38 points because Pelmac is really tough. They're a tough team. The kids are tough. It remains to be seen about this Newark bunch. This is what I love. Let's see it play out on the court. Doesn't matter what I say. I say a lot of things, but what happens on the court is what matters.
Right. Play to play the game. Then Friday night, Wayne travels down to Waterloo, so get to really see, I think, a couple teams that we have questions about. Also, have to take the court on Friday night.
Waterloo's got some really good tests this week.
Important week, I'd say, throughout all the leagues, and can see up there another full slate of games ahead on the boys' side of things as well. Any other games catch the eyes of anybody up there that I might have missed?
Clyde at Sodus for a second there early on this season. We thought Sodus was going to be something. They should be able to handle Clyde there, but it's.
How about HAC Red Jacket?
Yeah, the Finger Lake, all the Finger Lakes West games are going to be good games, and that's as much as there was harping on the Finger Lakes West boys. They play barn burners out there in the West, so so great. Any game that you want to watch from the West is going to come right down to it for the most part. But not too many really great games, this week.
It was admittedly on both sides a roughish week. And hey, that happens from time to time, right? To kind of pick from on the girls' side of things. Kick things off with a non-league game here. Southern Cayuga, traveling all the way over to Marcus Whitman tonight. So an interesting non-league matchup, Section 3 versus Section 5.
Yeah, Wolves versus Wildcats.
Tomorrow night, talked about this team a little bit in a couple different games, but Aquinas travels down here to Seneca Falls to take on Minders tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think that the Minders had a slot to fill, and it was difficult, so they finally went with Aquinas. But different than the situation with scheduling I was just talking about for Lions, if you're the Minders girls, you're already going to have Waterloo twice. You're going to have Pelmac. You're going to have Mid-Lakes. So to take on an Aquinas team, at least they're coming to Seneca Falls, but that's tough. But it'll be a good test for Miners. The Miners girls have talent. There's no doubt about it. So it's just that Mid-Lakes game that they lost after having a 20-point lead in the second quarter really kind of turned their season. If they had won and held on and won that game, I think we'd be saying a lot different things about Minders right now. So this is a chance for them to get back in the good graces, and I think they're one of the top 5 teams in the Finger Lakes are in our power rankings. I think they should be. So we'll see if they can get back there.
And then on the 13th, again, another test reminders. They head up to Palmyra Macedon. Nate will be there working with the students up there for that broadcast.
Bigger game than Aquinas is that Palmac game, though.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Bloomfield at Dundee Bradford, so a bigger game in the Finger Lakes West there as well.
I love that game.
Night.
Battle of 8-1 teams. Well, I mean, they could change by then. They'll probably play their games this week.
Yeah.
But
I did miss one game. I'll let you guys know. I did miss one game on the 13th that I should have put in on the girls' side of things. Admittedly, I saw it on the graphic. Gananda at Lions for the girls as well up in Wayne.
Yeah, I noticed that one. Yeah, it's a good one.
Any of those top 4 teams in Wayne County should be a good game as we've seen so far.
Yeah. But yeah, that Bloomfield Dundee Bradford game, that's a pretty big one at the top of the Finger Lakes West for the girls.
yeah.
Couple of one-loss teams apiece there, and rematch already. Talked about coming back around and cycling through. That's the second time of the year matchup already for them.
Kyle, I'm going to need updates on Friday night as I'm on that broadcast. Going to need me hitting Zoom for Dundee Bradford Bloomfield. Some updates there I can give to people live.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Nice.
As always. So that's the week ahead in Wayne Finger Lakes basketball action, everybody. Been another fun episode, I'd say. We got any parting thoughts before we head out for the week?
No, just like I said, I don't think that on a show like this that anybody wants to hear us not give opinions. And sometimes over the years, I've received pushback on some of the things I've said because these are high school kids. But you know what? It's just a game. And so anything I say about any of these teams, like questioning Newark's toughness, or questioning the entire Finger Lakes West, it's not personal. And if anything, prove me wrong on the court, But I think people want to hear us, give our honest opinions. And it's only high school basketball. I want all these kids to, obviously go on and have successful lives. And hopefully some of the lessons they learn on the court and through their practices and through their mentors and coaches will serve them well, after high school.
Yeah, you can't make everybody happy.
No, certainly not. Certainly not.
All right. Appreciate everybody tuning in, watching, and listening. Appreciate you guys, as always, coming on board. Appreciate DeSano Propane, Generations Bank, and Little John and Barbie Orthodontics for their support. As always, we do this live every Monday afternoon now at 2 p.m. Next week will be a bit of a schedule shift. I know we got people out of the office on Monday next week and stuff like that. So make sure you, when you look at our power rankings next Sunday night, make sure you take a look at what time we're going to be coming to you guys live next week. And for Nate Sharman, Kyle Evans, Jim Sinicropi, I'm Paul Russo, and everybody else. I just want to appreciate everybody for tuning in. We'll talk next week. Have an awesome week, everybody.